where we're at. Come in, come in. Now remember, last week, Jesus kind of put the benediction on everything with his final prayer, if you will. And they sang a hymn, as the other Gospels record. But John chooses not to record that as much as he records the prayer. And I showed you how that prayer tied together everything that Jesus was trying to teach us and how it all fit together and was proven not only by his word but by John's testimony as well, saying all of this stuff that Jesus is teaching us is true, folks. You got to believe this. Now, that's not the message that most people get from this chapter because they don't study John as John is supposed to be studied. There, in my opinion, professional opinion, there is a reason why the synoptic gospels all pretty much the same stuff, but John's way over here by himself with maybe just a couple of percentage, maybe 3% of John can be found in the other gospels. Mostly the main events like the crucifixion and the Last Supper thing, that kind of stuff. But 97% of John is uniquely John, and I believe there's not just a theological reason, but I believe that is part of the intention of God. When God tells us to grow, we all start off like children in Christianity. We learn about Jesus, we all can say, even our little kids can sing, Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. But if you question that child, well, really, where does Jesus tell you that he loves you in terms of the saving efficacy of the eschatological promise? And kids are going, I want candy. See, but soon, as they grow up and become ministers like I am, then they understand exactly what I just said, even though I don't really understand it. But the point is, the gospel is written in terms and in structure such that children can understand it, and yet it can baffle the greatest minds that have ever read it. And John is one of these gospels. John is not a gospel for beginners. It's a fun gospel if you just read it on a fun level. But if you really study John, you're going to go, if this is the Christianometer, and you're here, and you're here, and you're here, and maybe every once in a while you'll fall down a little, and then you do John the way John's meant to be studied, well, this is going to happen. You're going to consider things that you've not considered primarily because you haven't known for most of your life. But once you start putting pieces in place and start organizing and doing the chronology of perhaps John, I firmly believe John had the revelation before he wrote his gospel. The language is just too magnificent for him to write. Remember, who was John? He was just a fisherman. They weren't overly skilled in reading or writing. They knew to say, fishes will be 3 denarii. They could weigh out a fish, but they weren't overly keen in instruction. Now, if I said this was Paul and he was way up here, well, Paul was a Pharisee and a Sadducee and every kind of sea you could find. He was a brilliant scholar, an incredible thinker. You look at Romans has been considered, even by a non-godly world, to be the 3rd best book ever written. The Bible, the book of Romans. They give it that ranking not because of its theological content, but because of its structure and presentation. It's brilliant. But then again, Paul was a very learned man. He was brilliant. John, he threw fish around. So when John writes in a most incredible way, unmistakable way, the question of interpretation has got to be, how does he know that? Who taught him? Because so far, nobody else like that exists except Jesus. Jesus obviously taught that way. Paul, we can understand a little bit. He was a brilliant priest in the first place. Now he got even smarter. And he testifies that Jesus walked with him for 3 years in the wilderness when he was at Tarsus. Remember? So we can say, well, Jesus taught Paul. And we can say, well, Jesus taught John. Well, yeah, he did, but not to that level. John had an insight that the other guys didn't have. And if you study John for John, it's going to lift you. It's got to lift you a little bit higher. Not that that matters. But you know, as you're now an adult, I'm sure that you probably enjoy a big old hunkin' steak, if you're a meat eater. And not a bottle of that goo that Mom used to make and pour down our throats, right? Or applesauce, you know, everybody loves a good apple. Not really. I'd rather have the steak. Why? Well, because I'm not 3 anymore. I act 3. I'm not 3. And we are meant to grow. Well, this book is the one book in the whole world that can accommodate you. You can read it as a child, or you can be baffled by it as a learned adult. That's John. Now, the didache of John has come pretty much almost to an end. Not quite. But the Last Supper, you know, half the book is one thing. And we studied each of these chapters in its entirety, and then it was all under the benediction of Christ's prayer. So at this point now, the ministry, the didache, the teaching, the classroom work is over. What does that mean? Well, that means that the rest of the gospel is going to be evidential. Or in other words, Jesus is going to show by life experience, his life experience primarily, that everything he said is not only true, but is actually coming to pass. These things, the crucifixion, all these things, are going to uphold everything. What's it upholding? Well, it's upholding everything he taught here. It's upholding everything he taught here. This was the public ministry. This was just the apostles, the Last Supper. And then finally, 3 times in John, Jesus says, I'm telling you this so that when it happens, you will know I haven't been telling stories. I tell you this so that when it happens, you won't flee in fear. You won't run in confusion. You won't disbelieve. Doubt will not take your mind over. You will know for a fact that everything I've told you is true, not just in these events, but in the promises here, the divine promises here, and in all the works and miracles here. He's giving us, creation, a chance to see, or at least glimpse, an understanding of what is true versus, like John saw, versus the rest of the world saying, well, you know, the rest of the world is going, I'm not sure, maybe, could be, possibly. I'd rather do it this way because we've always done it that way. Never really taking the time to ask the interpretive question is, where am I in all of this? And Christians need to do that every once in a while. They need to sit down, quiet themselves, like the psalmist in 119, and say, here I am, Tom Chanter, 68 years old, in the light of Jesus Christ, the divine and eternal sacrifice, the forgiveness of sins, the promise of eternity, the beauty and love, compassion, mercy, grace, all of that stuff in Jesus. Okay, big question here is not about all the stuff God did, because I know what God did. The big question here is what? Where's Tom Chanter in all of that? Where's Benny Land in all of this? Where's Katie Newton in all of this? I'm not questioning the things of God. I'm questioning the things of me. Boom, now you're on steady ground. When you're willing to say, am I on the sinking sand or am I on the rock of ages? That's a great starting place to be. But you can't stay there. You got to move on. You got to grow up. John grew up. Paul grew up. We must all grow up. And Paul makes that quite plain. He says, you guys should be teachers by now. And you're not. What went wrong? Have you thought about, well, I sat in Chanter's class for weeks and years and months, and Now I'm 25 and I don't know where I am in all this. You should know where you are in all this. How many of you get in your car and just drive?
I don't.
You don't? Well, you don't drive. How many of you get on your bike and just ride until you get hit and run over by a truck? You're overthinking my metaphor here. Cut it out. How many of us just get in the car and drive? Oh, I'm just going to go. That was like a 70s thing. I'm going to go find myself. Well, when you do, tell yourself you still owe me 20 bucks when you find yourself. Nobody does that. In fact, I heard John Jackson fussing out there. He's going somewhere on a trip next year. And he was saying, well, you got to make your hotel reservations in advance. You can't just go out and Yellowstone Park or something like that. He was in the office. He said, you got to make your reservations now because they're booked for like 3 years. Of course they are. It's a big giant hole in the ground. Everybody loves to go there. So if you want to see the hole in the ground, what do you got to do? Make your reservation. Yeah, plan. Well, same thing is true with Jesus in heaven and the whole 9 yards. You want to go there, you got to make some plans. You got to understand how to get there, who to go through, who to assure in, trust in, and all that. And eventually, as John's gospel will tell you, Jesus is the what? The way, the truth, and the life. So if you want to know the way to get to the life and not have it not be a lie, but something you can rely on, that's it right there. Show us the Father, Lord, Lord. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the beginning, the middle, and the end of your journey. Keep your eyes focused on the author and the finisher of your faith. That's the way, the truth, unchanging. You can depend on it. And the life. Jesus is literally the highway that will never have any construction on it. No detours. In fact, he begs you, don't detour. Stay on the right. Stay on the right path. All right, let's look at 18. 18 is this stuff. It's substantiating everything. These are pillars, by the way. Reliable, strong pillars to prop up everything he promised to the people at large, everything he promised to the apostles at the Last Supper, and everything that he will prove until the end of time. All right? Now, when Jesus had spoken all these words, this is the Last Supper, he went forth with his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there is a garden into which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas also, who was betraying him, knew this place, for Jesus had often met there with his disciples. Judas then, having received the Roman cohort, that was a bunch of soldiers, and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came to the garden with lanterns and torches and weapons. And Jesus, knowing that all things were coming upon him, went forth and said, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus, the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." And Judas, who also was betraying him, was standing with them. When therefore he said to them, "I am he," they all drew back and fell to the ground. Now this is a very interesting thing here. And listen to how he says it. I am, comma, they don't have punctuation. He. And they all fell back. Why would you fall back? We're looking for Tom Chanter. Yo! Here I am.
I am is God.
There you go. I am. That's the way he's defined himself before the priests, and they tried to take him out and shove him off a cliff and stone him to death. Why? Well, because he associates himself with the Lord. And that was the ultimate blasphemy, at least in the mind of the Pharisee, or the priests. I am he, and they all fell back. Why? No other gospel writer reports that. Only John does. Because you stand, you bring evil in the face of the Lord, it will not stand. It will not stand. It will fall back. Now, is this important? Well, if you're trying to prove that everything you've taught is true, power of God, His time has come. Jesus said this is going to happen. It must happen. But let's give you one last glimpse to whom it is happening. It says, I am He. And they all fell back. Wow. Therefore, if you seek me, let these men go their way. He's protecting His own men. That the word might be fulfilled, of which He spoke, of whom thou hast given me, I lost not one. Remember that in the prayer. He just prayed that. Of those whom you've given me, I've lost not one, Lord, except for the son of perdition, but he was already marked for the kill anyway. So He protects him. And Simon Peter, therefore, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's slave, cutting off his right ear. And the slave's name was Malchus. And Jesus therefore said to Peter, stop, and put the sword into its sheath. The cup which the Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? And the Roman cohort and commander of the officers and the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him and led him to Annas first. Annas was one of the high priests, father-in-law of Caiaphas, that year. Now Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jews that it was expedient, it should be expedient for one man to die on behalf of the nation. And Simon Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. Now the other disciple we don't know. Not that that disciple was known to the high priest, and he entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door just outside, and the other disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. And the slave girl, therefore, who kept the door, said to Peter, you are not one of this man's disciples, are you? And he said, I am not. And the slaves and the officers who were standing there having made a charcoal fire, for it was very cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. And the high priest therefore questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. And Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the whole world. I've always taught in the synagogues and in this temple, and where all the Jews come together. I have spoken nothing in secret. Why do you now question me? Question those who have heard what I have spoke to them. Behold, these all know what I said. And when he said this, one of the officers standing by gave Jesus a blow or punch, saying, that is no way you answer the high priest. And Jesus answered him, if I have spoken wrongly, then bear witness of my wrong. But if I have spoken truthfully, why do you strike me? Annas therefore sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. And now Simon Peter was standing there warming himself. And they therefore said to him, behold, you are not also one of his disciples, are you? And he denied it and said, I am not. Now one of the slaves of the high priest, being a relative of one whose Peter cut his ear off, said, did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter therefore denied it vehemently a third time, and immediately a cock crowed. And they led Jesus therefore from Caiaphas and the praetorium, for it was very early, and they themselves did not enter into the praetorium in order that they might not be defiled and could eat the Passover. Remember, it was Passover at that time. That's why they were having the Seder meal in the upper room. It was Passover, the highest and holiest, one of the highest holy days of the year. Pilate therefore went out to them and said, what accusation do you bring against this man? And they answered and said to him, if this man were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Remember, it's 2 o'clock in the morning now, 3 o'clock in the morning. Pilate therefore said to him, take him yourself and judge him according to your own law. And the Jews said, we are not permitted to put anyone to death. that the word of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying to what kind of death he was about to die. Pilate therefore entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "You are the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others simply tell you about me?" Pilate looked at him and answered, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you up here to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting for me, that I might not be delivered up to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." And Pilate said to him again, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You have spoken correctly, that I am a king. And for this reason I have been born, and for this reason I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth will hear my voice." And Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had finished saying this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no guilt in this man. But you have a custom that I should release one prisoner for you at the time of Passover. So do you wish then that I should release for you the king of the Jews?" And they cried out and they said, "Not this man, but Barabbas." For Barabbas was a thief.
So it was Barabbas, not Barnabas. I was confused with the title on the bulletin. I didn't know which one was what.
God, I wish I knew what you were saying. Barnabas and Barabbas are two different people.
I know, I was just confused.
I'm preaching on Barnabas.
I know.
Did you get the right guy in the bulletin? Barabbas was a bad guy. Barnabas is a good guy. Oh my word. What do you think about this? Very interesting. I mean, just there's stuff flying everywhere. But you got to ask yourself, what the heck? Peter's standing there denying Christ. Well, he told him that would happen. Jesus said back here, "You're going to deny me 3 times. Well, this is true. Peter would have caught that lesson, don't you think? And the other disciple, wonder who he was. But he saw it. That was also true. So far, Jesus is batting 1,000. And that he would be crucified, well, that was made true. Everything Jesus said is coming true with a vengeance. Not just kind of true, sort of true. If we really stretch it, it might fit. Oh, no. It's coming true. Whether Jesus is there or not. You got to remember, Peter's standing over at the door. You don't want to get arrested. Jesus is over here getting interrogated. 3 times he denies Christ within earshot of Christ. A cock crows. Everybody hears that. Well, how many cocks have crowed on how many mornings over all the billions of years? A bunch. Why does this one mean anything to anybody? Because he said it before it happened. It's like he knew. It's also 2:30 in the morning. We need to have our chicken fixed. He's running a little more fast.
Daylight savings time.
Yeah, daylight savings time. Dumb chicken. Chicken didn't have a watch, obviously. What is John trying to convey in his gospel? More than anything else. Truth. He's the only one that says, that records that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. The way is how to get there. The life is the goal that you seek. But the truth is the unchanging assurance that it's already going on. You don't believe that? You know what? Before the sun rises, probably around 2:30 because we got a busted chicken. Before the sun rises, you will deny me 3 times. No, I won't. I'll follow you into death. Mighty Peter. Wow. Why would John include that so prominent? Because he's trying to emphasize one thing above all else. If you don't ever read another book, read this one. Because I can assure you, it's not only going to happen, it's happening right now. Everything Jesus said is happening right now. Wow. In their world, in their seeing, in their hearing. And you see references to that. If I've spoken falsely, then point out the falseness. But if I've spoken truly, then why are you punching me? Why don't you go ask the people that I've taught? I've never taught anything secretly. I've never taught anything in whispers that might be questionable. Everything I've said has been made public in every possible way. So why are you grilling me now? And I love it. I love it. What is the truth, Pilate? If I'm speaking falsely, fine, then arrest me. But if I'm speaking the truth, then why are you not listening? Why are you at least not considering? Where's my considering? There it is. Why are you at least not even considering? So Pilate screams out, the truth? What is the truth? And he doesn't wait for the answer. He goes right back out to the Jews. And they say, well, it's Passover time, I don't find any guilt in this guy. He's just another nut job religionist like all of you are. Because he's preaching a different, message than you preach. I don't know, that's your problem. You go deal with it. And they answer a very interesting way. They say, well, we're not allowed to put people to death. He says, you have your own law. Go ahead and do whatever you do to people that break your law. And they answer, we're not allowed to put people to death. See, Romans were in charge. They were the only ones that could put people to death. Jews couldn't do it. Made it very convenient, right? We need Roman soldiers with Roman stuff to arrest this Jew, and we need Roman guys who couldn't give a hoot and a holler. In fact, it was almost a punishment to be sent to Jerusalem or Israel. If you were a really good Roman, you'd be fighting in Rome. You'd be marching with the great commanders. But no, if you get sent to Israel, it's kind of like a little wasteland. How many sloppy soldiers we got? Send them to Pilate. But quite frankly, Pilate didn't want to be there either. To give up the luxuries of Rome for Micanopy, Bithlo. It was not a promotion. And then to put up with a bunch of obstinate people like the Jews? Oh, that's unfair characterization. No, it's not. They had been oppressed for a long time. They were less than cooperative. They had planned to destroy this because their lie was self-evident. The lies of the priests and the people who were getting rich off the backs of their own people, who were enslaving their own people, robbing their own people, worse than the Romans were. The Romans didn't really care. They just wanted to get through their assignment and go home to Rome. It was the priests, the holy people of God, that was really robbing them blind, keeping them oppressed, keeping them poor, keeping them ignorant, and the worst charge is keeping them away from God. If you didn't have the money or the land or the property that I wanted, well then I'll write you out of the temple, lady. Now, no temple for you. Come back 2 years. And I'm not kidding you. This is what it was. Caiaphas, Annas, those guys were in business together. That whole money changer thing where Jesus got mad and kicked over his teeth. You think these two guys are really endeared with Jesus now? That was their business. That's what got them the big house with all the nice stuff. And the Jeep and the garage and the boat and all that. Annas and Caiaphas were businessmen. Oh, they're high priests. No, they weren't. They were businessmen. Jesus knew that. They knew that. The world knew that. And Rome didn't give a dang about any of it. Pilate said, I find no guilt in this man. You guys are just nuts. You want to do all your religious nonsense? Do it. Leave me out of it. So he picks an avenue out. He says it's a tradition. I don't know why. It's a stupid tradition. But I'm supposed to let one bad guy go every year. Now, who do you want? The king of the Jews or the bad guy? Not Barnabas. Barabbas. And they all scream. Of course, the priests scream, Barabbas, give us Barabbas. What then am I to do with this Jesus? I can't put him in jail because he hadn't done anything. All right, he's rabble-roused a little bit. He's aggravated you guys. I'll tell you what, we'll make a deal. I'll scourge him, 39 lashes, pretty common discipline in those days. And then we'll let him go. You go back to bed. You go back to bed. I'm going to go back to bed. And somebody fix that chicken. That's not what they wanted, was it? Not good enough. Yeah, we'll take Barabbas. He wasn't just a robber or a thief. He was a zealot. He liked to hate Romans and kill them and rob them every chance he got. Just like Simon. Simon, one of the apostles, was a zealot. Not a good guy. He became a good guy. But when Jesus called him, he was not a good guy. You see how this thing is just fraught with contradictions? Everything the world wants and has upheld as this is the world and it is true. This Jesus is saying, no, that's not true. This is. This is. This is. And I'll prove it to you. The epitome of this irony is Pilate screaming in his own praetorium courthouse guard, what is truth? Now you're looking into the eyeballs of God, into the eyeballs of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, and you scream, what is truth? It's 2:30 in the morning. And he doesn't even wait for an answer. He goes out and yells at the priests. What the heck are you guys doing here? Give us Barabbas. You don't want Jesus? He's the king of the Jews. You just said that. You want a king? Have a king? I don't care. I just want to go back to sleep. Wake up in the morning, find a note that says, come home to Rome. That's what I want. And fix that chicken. Well, we need this guy dead. Really? 2 o'clock in the morning, you need a guy dead. When did you think we were going to do this? Now? All my killing guys are asleep right now. All my soldiers are asleep. See the frustration of Pilate? He tries again with the whole I wash my hands thing. He says, I find no guilt in this man. What are you doing? I'm beginning to believe that he's not the bad guy here. Pilate becomes the poster child for political, I don't know, well, political correctness or just political indifference. You know, he even asked Jesus the question, I'm not a Jew, am I? Do I look like a Jew? Do I sound like a Jew? Do I speak like a Jew? By the way, just between you and me, I hate Jews. I want to go home to Rome. Pilate becomes the poster boy of political indifference. Oh, why would Jesus put this in here? Because it's true. People hide behind politics all the time. People hide behind idolatry. T-R-Y. All the time. People hide behind their power and their position. I don't know. All the time. And it means nothing. Question. Did Caiaphas die? Well, historically he did. Did Annas die? Historically he did. Did their power or position as high priests that year prevent any of that from happening? Well, now we have to speculate. Do you think Caiaphas and Annas stood before God and had to give an account for all of the crapola they had been preaching their whole life? Only to make themselves fat and rich and powerful so that when the truth confronted them, they could hide behind that power and say, we need this man dead. He's messing up my artwork and I don't like it. This is true, and this is true, and this is true. I've said it many times to people that believe in Jesus. I said, you know what? Now that you believe in God and accepted Jesus for your Savior, you've just ruined the rest of your life here on earth. What, Tom? Well, just as Jesus said, they hate me, they're going to hate you. Everyone who loves me, don't expect to be the man of honor at all these banquets and festivities. On the contrary, Jesus didn't say it, but he actually did say it. Quickest way to kill a nice party is go in and ask everybody if they believe in Jesus. Do you believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior? Do you believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior? Do you believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior? This is your opportunity. And like most people that are not truly criminals, they don't say, no, I don't believe in Jesus. They just say, not now. Delay technique, you know? Why do today what you can put off indefinitely? That was my mantra for life. Why take a responsibility today when you can put stuff off? So we say, not now, I have an agenda, I'm busy. B-U-S-Y, I'm busy. I got more important stuff to do other than consider this Jesus mess. Not to mention it's 2:30 in the morning and we got a busted chicken. Ow. I hate this carpet because my shoes don't slide on it. Take it out. The fact of the matter is, we have, and this is also true, every excuse in the world in an attempt to delay the inevitable. One of these days, Benny's not going to come to church. You know why? She's got a busted chicken. No. One of these days she's not going to come to church because she will have laid down and gone to sleep and God says, time to come home. No, I'm not going to make you my secretary because I need to find stuff occasionally. And I know Tom has been going to spend the rest of his life looking for stuff that you filed. And he'll never find it. We both know that. That's the inevitable. Now, to prolong that, what do? Well, we exercise. And we eat right. Break out the bran muffins for everybody. Oh boy, bran again. And we do everything we can. We don't smoke, we don't spit, we don't chew. We don't drink. We don't smoke. We don't drive fast cars, and we always obey the law. We don't ride with Chanter in his truck. These things will all prevent you from dying prematurely. But
Right now.
For right now. But what happens eventually?
The body goes.
You know, Carol and I have this fight all the time because my old man died at 54. My brother died at 54. My mom, well, she lived a lot longer, but all the Chanter men tend to die early.
Except one, two.
Except one or two. And here I am up at 68, and I'm like, wow, boy, I've got a couple extra years. Well, was that the Lord having something for me to do? Was it good genetics on my part? Was it because I have been eating right, going through the Crystal drive-thru?
Probably not.
Yeah, that eating right thing, I'm never going to be accused of that, buddy. Ever.
Because God knows we need you here.
Well, but any minister can do this.
No, that's
You know, for
true.
crying out loud, we look at spacemen and go, oh, they're wonderful. You know who went to space first? Monkeys. We sent monkeys to space. Pull this knob. Ugh. The fact is, we make and we use every kind of excuse in the world to achieve, or at least delay, that which is going to happen anyway. Right? Some kids never want to grow up. And they say you can't. You know one song at Christmas always bothers me. Toyland, you ever heard that song? Mm-hmm. Toyland, Toyland, once you cross this border, you can never return again. That's nonsense. I was a kid, I had toys, and I played in Toyland. I loved it. And I left its borders because I grew up a little bit, went to school, went to high school, went to college, met a woman, fell in love, got married, and you know what we did? We had babies. Little critters. And you know where we went after we had the little critters? Back to Toyland. And you know what? I got to play with those toys all over again for years. It was fabulous. Then I must cross that border again and came back to the real world because my kids were going off to college and I had to pay for it. And all this is happening and they were getting married and all that. And I had to marry them. I was doing all this stuff back as an adult. And you know what they did? They got married and they had little critters.
You get to play again.
Back to Toyland. I know the way there. Follow me, guys. And the song says, well, once you cross its borders, you can never return. I beg to differ. That's a romantic and noble idea, but the fact of the matter is I've been in and out of that store a lot of times. And here I am, 68 years old, and I'm still playing with cars and trucks. Monster trucks. Carol's made a cake that looked like a monster truck thing. We make excuse for prolonging the inevitable. We make excuse, I'm busy, I got too much stuff to do, it's 2:30 in the morning, come back. Or we make excuse, just the quick, simple answer, not now. How many times as parents have your kids come to you and said, Mom, can we do this? Not now. What does that really mean? No, go away and find your real parents. That's what that means. Not now. Hey, folks, how many of you know about Jesus Christ? Don't throw stuff. Not now. Jesus said, the world hates me. The world's going to hate you. And you know what I have to say about that? It's true. Don't think that when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that somehow this world is going to be magical and love everything you do and love everything you say and want to be around you 24/7. Really? My life been that way, Benny? Hardly. For every one person who will celebrate your Christianity, you'll find 10 that hate it. For every one person that will say, Barbara, let me know when you're going to do that so I can come help you. You'll find 10 that says, forget it, that's your headache. Deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Well, as bad as that sounds, it's also true. What is John trying to prove in his gospel? Truth. The good things, we love to hear that. Yay, they're true. If it weren't so, I wouldn't have told. Father's kingdom, plenty of room, nice houses, low rents, waterfront property, streets of gold. Talk about property value. But if you want to get there, you're going to have to pick up your cross and follow me. And that means through this, through this, through this. And you come out on the end a little beat up. Your hat. But, and this is what we ask ourselves, was it worth it? Paul was going to get his head cut off, and he says, there is laid up for me in heaven a magnificent treasure, and I shall receive it, and God will give it to me, as Scriptures has. The Gospels report, the Lord God, Jesus says, He's gladly, God's glad about it. He's gladly already given you His kingdom. He's just waiting for you to get there. In the meantime, you got work to do. A lot of crap down there you got to wade through. Is it worth it? Same thing John asked God on the island of Patmos. And God said, come here, John. I want to show you something. It's really cool. Let's go. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth set before me. And it was beautiful. I like the terms he uses. And it was beautiful. As beautiful as a bride is when she's adorned for her husband on their wedding day. Never heard property praised quite like that before, but think of the imagery here. It was gorgeous. I've never seen anything so incredible. And then he starts describing it. And it's even more incredible. And part of you, I don't care how cold and dead you are spiritually, part of you in the background, in the brain somewhere says, I hope that's true. I would love to be there. I'd love to see that. If it's true. Welcome to the Gospel of John. He'll make all that true, but He'll also make what's going on just as true. And it's just like God said, the world will call that which is true and pure bad, and He'll call that which is ugly and horrible good. Yay! But that's the world speaking to you. Jesus and John and everybody else is saying, don't buy it. The world is not worth it. It's passing away. And there's nothing you can do about that. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. All this other nonsense in the world will be taken care of. He says it a second time. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. What will a man gain? What will it profit a man to gain the whole world and then miss the goal? And if he misses that goal, what would a man give to God to redeem that goal? I mean, what does God need that He doesn't already have? Remember the I am thing? Lacking nothing. What would you give God to redeem your soul after you found out, well, it would have been worth it, but I didn't go that way? Oh, a righteous God would never throw a person into hell. He's not. He's just letting you go on down the road you decided to follow, which happens to be hell. One word, the Gospel of John. This is on the test in heaven, by the way. One word, the Gospel of John tries to emphasize more than anything else. He does it by light and darkness. He does it by life and death. He does it by faithful and unfaithful. And that is, what is, the question Pilate asked, what is true? And where do I fit in all this? There's your key right there. It didn't come by way of the one under fire Spirit teaching. It came by way of a man who couldn't give a dang. You can use a little stronger word there if you want, but he hit the nail right on the head. Am I a Jew? Do I look like a Jew? I'm a king. As you can see, I am. What about you? Are you a king? Is this something you found out yourself, Pilate, or is this somebody else telling you? Well, somebody else telling you. And then he gets a little snarky. Says, do I look like a Jew? Am I a Jew? What, should I even care about this? Well, the answer to that question is yes, you should. But not from a political way, from a personal way. Are we done?
Oh my goodness, you got 2 minutes.
2 minutes, let's go. All right, we'll pick it up next week in 19. You'll see what else happens. We're not done yet.